Welcome to Roller Coaster Paradise. Six Flags Magic Mountain is about as close as you can get to heaven on earth. And although maybe unpopular, I personally think that every complaint enthusiasts give this park should be redundant. I also think that Magic Mountain rivals Cedar Point for best amusement park in North America. I love them almost equally, and yes, I consider this park to be a 10 out of 10. So yeah, if you couldn't tell by now, I love Six Flags Magic Mountain. Every day I've spent at the park has been legitimately perfect, and in this video, we will be ranking all 17 roller coasters in the park that I have been on. Just a quick note, the reason this video isn't a ranking of the 19 existing coasters at the park is because Magic Flyer is impossible to ride if you aren't below a certain height, and because the park's ongoing coronavirus shutdown prevented me from riding West Coast racers. Still, I've been on every other coaster in the park, and today I will be ranking all of them from least favorite to most favorite. Before we get into the video, I'd like to mention that we are getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, and it would mean a lot if you could help out with that. These videos take a lot of time and effort to make, and by you guys subscribing to the channel, it shows that you are all really enjoying the content. With that out of the way, let's dive right into this crazy collection of roller coasters. Number 17, Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers. Fun fact, not only does this park have the most roller coasters of any in the world, but they also have the most kiddie coasters at 4. Like I said before, I haven't ridden the park's smallest coaster, Magic Flyer, due to the height cutoff, but out of the 3 I have been on, Speedy Gonzales is my least favorite. The ride really just seemed like a placeholder when it was built in 2014, so that the park could retain its records of most coasters in one park. The cacti theming is kinda nice, but the layout is cloned all around the world, and the legroom is extremely minimal. Number 16, Roadrunner Express. Roadrunner Express is a Vekoma Jr. coaster with the same layout as rides such as Gadget's Go Coaster at Disneyland and Woody Woodpecker's Nut House Coaster at Universal Studios Florida. Although the theming is undoubtedly solid for a Six Flags coaster, I was surprised by how much the ride was shaking me around, and like Speedy Gonzales, the layout is bland and unoriginal. Number 15, Canyon Blaster. When I go out of my way for a kiddie coaster credit, I make sure that I don't have to have a little kid riding with me and that I can make the height cutoff in general. When I'm stumbling across a kid's coaster where both of these things allow me to quickly snag the credit, I always hope that they are built by E&F. Well, guess what? This one is. Canyon Blaster is the highest ranked kiddie coaster in the park for me, not because there's any good theming, but because it's actually somewhat enjoyable. You can legitimately find some good airtime and laterals on those built by E&F, so I have nothing bad to say about this ride for the type of coaster that it is. Number 14, Gold Rusher. Gold Rusher is my favorite of the Aero Mine Train coasters I've ridden, and it opened with the park back in 1971. Despite this, the ride isn't any jankier than any other Aero, and it's quite a fun ride actually. And my favorite moment on the ride that really makes this statement true to me is the airtime moment that you can get going into the final brake run. The setting is nice and works well with the hilly terrain, and above all, I really hope this ride is able to stay around for many decades to come. Number 13, New Revolution. The New Revolution, otherwise known as the Great American Revolution, La Revolution, or just the Revolution, is a very notable ride in the park's history. When it opened in 1976, it was the first coaster since the attempts of the 1880s to feature a full circular vertical loop. Manufactured by Schwarzkopf, the ride genuinely still holds up to this day. It has a couple of hills that take you through the trees and a nice tunnel as well. It may not be anything too special to this date, but you gotta respect it for its historical aspect. Number 12, Goliath. I know, you might think it's crazy that I put a 255-foot tall hypercoaster just one spot above New Revolution, but if you know me well, then you know I absolutely despise this ride. It's one of my least favorite thrill rides in the world just because of the fact that it's such a waste of a hypercoaster. It was manufactured by Giovanola, so it's no wonder why, but the ride features zero airtime and zero force outside of the intense double helix that can be found at the end of the layout. The mid-course slows the train down to a halt, the drop is very shallow, and the coaster is simply boring. Goliath often gets long lines, so I'm always sure to skip it whenever I'm at the park. Number 11, Ninja. Ninja is one of the few Aero suspended swinging coasters left in operation, and it's definitely a fun one too. The layout consists of many twists and turns, most of which provide some great sway within the ride vehicles. With an opening dating back to 1988, the ride runs very well and as a whole is my favorite family coaster in the park. Despite its old age, I'm grateful that the ride stuck around for this long as a whole. Number 10, Superman Escape from Krypton. Opening in 1997 as Superman the Escape, this coaster was the first to propel riders to the 100-mile-per-hour barrier, launching you forwards and taking you up a 415-foot tall tower with the greeting of a little Superman statue. It was certainly pretty impressive for its time. For the 2011 season, the park decided to try something a little different. They gave the ride a new paint job, a new name, and most importantly, flipped the cars backwards so that you could take the giant vertical drop facing forwards. This also meant that it was, and still is, the fastest roller coaster on Earth to go backwards, unless you count a King Dakar or Top Thrill Dragster rollback. Still, these are some crazy stats all around, and it's a shame that this ride gets as much hate as it does. Most enthusiasts look at it as boring, and I'll admit, in most seats it is, but if you sit in the front row and take in all that speed face first, it makes the experience so much more exciting. Also, just a quick disclaimer, no one ever seems to address this, but Superman is absolutely the most unreliable attraction in the entire park. If it's open the day you go, it won't break down all that much, but that "if" is very important here. It has been closed for more than half of my visits to the park, so just keep that in mind if you're planning your first visit to the park in the not so distant future. Number 9. Scream. Another coaster that gets an unfair amount of hate in my opinion is Scream, a ride that is a mirror clone of Bizarro at Six Flags Great Adventure, which you hear mostly good things from. So why is Scream so hated? Most roller coaster enthusiasts actually like to complain about this ride being a parking lot coaster and or being a rough ride. Now let me quickly address both of these issues and why neither of them bother me. First and foremost, yes, it's a parking lot coaster, but so is Twisted Colossus, and you never hear people saying bad things about that ride. Also, when you are going at speeds of 63 miles per hour and going through 7 inversions, you'll easily forget about it during the ride experience anyways. In regards to the roughness, wait, what roughness? I've been on this thing a pretty fair amount of times, and none of my rides on it have ever been rough. It might be a tad bit shaky, but very few roller coasters built by B&M aren't. I don't know, I guess my opinion on this ride is quite the oddball opinion, but I still look forward to the next time I can get a back row ride on this thing. Number 8. Viper. One of the more polarizing rides in the park is Viper, a coaster that some love and some hate. Once upon a time, this ride was actually the one large-scale roller coaster that I hated more than any other, but after a relatively long refurbishment that lasted through late 2018 and early 2019, my opinions took a complete 180. I still have no idea what they did to Viper to improve it this much, but nowadays I love it more than I ever have in my life. Even with it being one of the most unpopular attractions in the entire park, I have to show some respect to Magic Mountain for putting this much effort into maintaining this classic. I would hate to see this ride go, and truthfully, I hope that day never comes because this ride is intense, fierce, and janky, but for all of those reasons are why I love it so much. Number 7. Riddlers Revenge. Hey look, another polarizing ride. While realistically, most enthusiasts that I talk to really do enjoy Riddlers Revenge, it's mostly the stand-up design that's polarizing here, but I personally don't find this ride to be painful or uncomfortable at all. I love taking all 6 of its inversions at such great levels of intensity and good amounts of smoothness too. Riddler's Revenge really makes a name for itself in the back of the park with its imposing size and loud B&M roar. Even though I haven't been on every B&M stand-up coaster, I find it hard to believe that any could be superior, especially after riding Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure, which is the second largest B&M stand-up coaster. Number 6. Batman the Ride. Batman, despite having been cloned so many times, is an incredible invert. Oftentimes, I will hear that this one in particular runs faster than all of the other Batmans, except for maybe the Six Flags Over Georgia version, but either way, it's so intense, the elements are so whippy, the layout is so fast-paced, and its speed is maintained perfectly all the way until you hit the brakes. In my opinion, I don't think the Batman clones get nearly enough credit, because so many people knock on them for being cloned. It's about as perfect as any other cloned coaster, so I really have nothing bad to say about Batman the Ride. Number 5. Apocalypse. Apocalypse has had quite the interesting history when regarding my past experiences with it. It started with one ride in 2015. It was my first time on it, as with every other coaster in the park, and I thought it was fantastic, though back then I didn't exactly rank coasters. That said, from every single one of my visits there on out, it seemed like I was cursed. Every time I'd go to ride Apocalypse, there would be a new reason for it to be closed and for me not being able to ride it. This happened many times until one visit when it actually was open, but it had an outrageous line, so we said we'd come back for it, but didn't. Then the ride shut down for a massive renovation that included a complete retrack and re-theme. This went on for approximately a year and a half, but I finally got back on it during Fright Fest in 2019. It was closed for the entire first half of the day, but it eventually opened up because the park knew that one maze in that section of the park wasn't going to attract people enough to walk all the way back there. I got several rides on it that day and loved every single one. I found the ride to be very smooth, fast-paced, filled with airtime, and incredibly well themed in the queue. Oh, and to this day, I find it very weird and coincidental that the new theme is literally about a wide-spreading virus. Number 4. Full Throttle. Opening in 2013, Full Throttle is one of the newer coasters at the park, and it's absolutely one of the best as well. Although short, the ride packs in a lot of great elements. I will say, the first and second launches are pretty gradual, but the third one that blasts you out of the tunnel to give you enough speed to clear the top hat is excellent. Speaking of the top hat, this is the only roller coaster in the entire world with a two-sided track, the first of which is upside down and is part of North America's tallest vertical loop, a record that this ride has been known for years. The second time you clear the track, you are actually going over the top of the loop. It provides a very nice view of the park, and more importantly, a killer finale. The airtime you get coming off of the top hat is some of the most violent ejector you can find anywhere, and what makes it even crazier is that the final set of brakes kick in during the drop. Some may look at this as a downside, but I look at it as a huge reason that the final airtime moment is so good. The brakes unexpectedly slow the train during the drop, which pushes riders forwards during the sensation of ejector airtime. Along with having great hang time and positive G-force as well, Full Throttle really does have a lot to offer in its not so lengthy layout. Number 3, Tatsu. Tatsu is a B&M flying coaster, of which is the best of its kind that I've been on. Don't get me wrong, there's no doubt in my mind that Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan and Starry Skyripper at Joyland in China can and will be better than Tatsu, but nevertheless, I think Tatsu is the king of American flying coasters. Most of them start off with the pretzel loop right after the first drop, but Tatsus take place towards the end of the layout, all because of the park's unique terrain. This pretzel loop is the tallest in the world and will literally knock the wind out of you if you aren't expecting it. Because of the terrain, many of the ride's elements are taken from very high in the air, and doing this while in a prone position really does help the ride simulate the sensations of flight. I love Tatsu, and I'm not sure it'll ever fall off my list of favorite B&Ms. Number 2, Twisted Colossus. Now we get into the elites. Twisted Colossus is absolutely astounding. It's the only dueling RMC, and even better is a Mobius loop coaster, meaning rather than the ride being 2 separate tracks and credits, it's all connected together into one long track, allowing riders to experience both the blue and green sides in one ride experience. Both sides are loaded with Rocky Mountain Construction signature ejector airtime moments, all while flinging you up out of your seat, onto your side, upside down, and just so much more. My favorite of these elements in regards to racing is the Top Gun stall, an element where one train is stalling upside down just above the other track, while the separate side is going over an airtime hill filled with sustained ejector airtime. The best case scenario in Twisted Colossus is when you can race your friends by sticking them on the train just ahead of you, but even if you don't duel, you'll still have an exceptional layout to look forward to. Number 1, X2. I have 3 words to best describe X2. What the hell? When X2 opened in 2002, it did things that were unthinkable at the time, things that were unimaginable for many people. It was the first 4-dimensional roller coaster, meaning that while riders are suspended over the sides of the track, their seats are rotating throughout the layout. Oh, and this layout consists of some batshit crazy elements, the first being a 215-foot tall vertical drop in which riders are facing downwards and flipped out at the last second. There is also an inside Raven turn that is dreamlike, a full front flip directly after, a fly to lie, and an outside Raven turn that may take the cake for the world's most aggressive roller coaster element ever. Outside of the layout, there is also an amazing soundtrack that works only sometimes, and a set of flamethrowers that again, work only sometimes. But if you can get a perfect night ride where the ride is running well, the soundtrack is working, the fire effects are turned on, and the moon is shining bright, that's about as good as any coaster ride can get. X2 is absolutely unreal, and knowing that there's 2 crazier variants in Asia blow my mind. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video in which I've covered the 17 operating roller coasters I've personally ridden at the thrill capital of the world. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it would mean a lot if you could help the channel reach 1,000 subscribers, but until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys.